Hey guys, Marilla here, and today I am going to be using a Groudon team that I found on Nothuka. Groudon, not exactly a popular choice. It's got quite a bit of flaws. So where do we even start? So it's going to be attacking second against a lot of faster Uber threats like Zacian and Calyrex. And on top of that, it's got some good Pokemon that check it defensively really well, so mainly Landorus. And ground is a move that you can't really spam as easily. A lot of teams are going to have a multiple ground resists, and you're going to have to predict around that pretty well. And Kyogre is also a threat if it can switch in after you brought in your Groudon. So you have to manage your matchups really well. You have to get enough value out of Groudon. So if they were to bring in Kyogre second, you want to capitalize on that by getting KOs before that happens. And what are the advantages of using Groudon? You do have quite a bit of 1v1 matchups that you win, mainly Zacian. You need to not take any prior damage for it, but you can beat it in a 1v1 situation. There were two main Groudon sets that people were experimenting with on the higher ladder. First is this Assault Vest set that you see over there, which is going to take advantage of AV on top of Max Quake in order to get monster special defense. So if you're reliant on Kyogre coming in second, then you are going to stack enough special defense to the point that they might not be able to one-shot you. The other is a Custep Sword Stance set, so that tries to work around its lower base speed. And let's Groudon invest in its bulk and go for the outspeed as well. Kind of have your cake and eat it too. So we have a pretty offensive Eternatus team here. And there's a few options here. I do think about leading Groudon because it's got stellar matchup against basically everything else on their team. You could argue the only thing that it doesn't is against the Rillaboom, which is going to do a lot of damage with the Grassy Glide or Wood Hammer, depending on how fast it is. My Groudon is quite slow. And the other thing is I definitely want to bring D-Knight for the Rillaboom matchup, but then I am going to be quite weak against the Pheromosa. Against Sash Pheromosa, it's going to do a lot of damage to Groudon. So actually I want to lead Mimikyu in order to not take too much from that lead. So if I were to face Rillaboom, which is not the best matchup for the Mimikyu, I can still go out into D-Knight. And he leads with the Regirock. And this is also fine because I can go right back out into my Groudon. So I would have been better off leading Groudon in hindsight, of course, but I didn't want to lead Groudon into a potential Rillaboom or be forced to face down Dragonite, Pheromosa with Dragonite on the field. But he does go for the Stealth Rock here. That means that my Dragonite has a lot less value than it otherwise might. So I just go for the Precipice Blades here. He has minimal switch-ins, so Pheromosa is a resist, but it's still going to be taking tons. And Zapdos, while it is immune, is not exactly a favorite matchup against this Groudon, especially with the Assault Vest. And I do catch the Ditto on the switch-in, so this should do quite a bit with the Ditto's lesser HP, but I miss. And actually, I'm still okay with this, mainly because the fact that he brought Ditto in like this suggests that he really doesn't have much of a response to Groudon. So if he went Rillaboom on the Precipice Miss, I would have been pretty upset, but this isn't the end of the world. I do Dynamax here because even though this is not going to KO, I want to minimize the damage that I take from the opposing Solar Beam. So at this point in the game, I am thinking it's very likely that the opponent might just have Eternatus at the final Pokemon. So I want to preserve my health on the Groudon as much as possible. And will play around this Ditto Groudon as if he has Eternatus in the back. He might not, because I do have my Groudon, I do have my Mimikyu, so it is a decently fair choice for him to not bring his restricted in this matchup. But I am going to play around his team like it is, because if he didn't bring the Eternatus, I can play around the rest of the Pokemon in other ways, but I don't want to just take 80% on my Groudon and be left in a compromising situation when Eternatus actually comes out.
I do have my Mimikyu in the back, but because it is not Sword Stance, it's Curse. So he might just be able to win that 1v1 by just simply switching out. And depends on the rest of this team and the set as well, but he does reveal that he has Zapdos here though, so no Eternatus here. I am just going to go for the Max Rock Ball. I'm just gonna go for the move that's right in front of me. I have very little reason not to, because I already have my +1 special defense. I have my Assault Vest on top of that, so I am confident that I can actually live a max Airstream even after my Dynamax runs out. And if he can't one-shot me, then he's gonna struggle to break through this Groudon on top of the Mimikyu and all that. So, but still good play by him to recognize that I was 100% going for the Rock Ball. I was never messing around with anything here. And in fact, I go for the Stone Edge here on top of that again. So I wanted to cover the option that he just tries to dance around my Precipice Blades and my Stone Edges. But he stays in, which is a good play by him. And at this point, I recognize that he is sacking this Regirock, so I will go for the Precipice, and that just knocks it out. So Groudon really strong, even without any boosts. Okay, I mean, it is a super effective move, but at the same time, Regirock is so defensively bulky, so that I think that's pretty impressive. The opponent might not be too defensively invested on this Regirock, but still. And here, I go for a simple Stone Edge. I just want to do as much damage as possible, and if he Dynamaxes, he has to Dynamax in order to survive the Stone Edge. So what I'm going to do here is basically go into my Mimikyu, Trick Room, Phantom Force, and that should stall out all 3 turns of his Dynamax and put him in a really poor spot with his Zapdos. So yeah, he goes for the Airstream. That does quite a bit actually, but let's see. And he's the Life Orb, so even with the Life Orb, Zapdos not doing enough, and Groudon goes for the Stone Edge crit, and the crit definitely did not matter because I just needed him to go down in range of Mimikyu, but he just forfeits there, which is fair. Good game. My next game is against a pretty standard looking Zacian team. He has a Hippo lead though, and honestly I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do against a Hippo lead. It just completely destroys this team, and I don't really have much of a counterplay to that, so I'm kind of scared. I'm going to lead with the Chandelure though. I do have the taunt, and my game plan here when I lead it is I'm gonna taunt the Hippo if he leads, and he's almost certainly leading the Hippo, And if he happens to like play around the taunt and just go for EQ, which is a totally plausible play, but that could just lose on the spot. But I take my gamble here because I'm not really sure how this team beats Hippo. Otherwise, maybe there is some kind of interaction that I am missing. But other than that, this seems like a pretty grim matchup here, so I am going to take my gamble here. He leads Hippo, just as anticipated, and I will go for the taunt. That will deny any Stealth Rocks, any Yawn, any shenanigans here. So he goes for the Stealth Rock as I go for the taunt. He gets denied, and I am thinking, do I really switch out into Dragonite or Groudon on the forced EQ? I don't want to lose my multi-scale. I am checking that he does indeed have the Zacian. So, because my focus sash on the Chandelure is already removed, I am just gonna go for the Energy Ball. My bad, that just kind of clipped badly when I looked at while I was editing, but I do way over half. He activates his Citrus on the Energy Ball, and I die to EQ. That's what happened last turn. So I am going to just go for the Solar Beam here. The way he took that Energy Ball seemed like it was a physically defensive Hippo. On top of that, I don't want to miss Precipice Blades. It does have a very low accuracy to be using as your main stab choice. So if he were to go into a ground resist, it also doesn't take much from Solar Beam. So if he switches, that would be a totally fair play. If he switches out into, say, Rotom Heat or Gyarados or anything like that. But he either doesn't have it or he doesn't think it's worth it. So, and Hippo goes down. So if he didn't think that taking that Solar Beam damage was worth it, he was going to go into Gyarados right now. Or he just doesn't have it. He might bring in something else, and that would basically say, no, I don't have a Gyarados or a Rotom Heat. But he does bring in his Zacian on the spot, which is obviously a poor matchup. So I am going to go for the Max Flare, because that's going to at least do some damage to the Gyarados or the Rotom Heat. So he does pull out. So yeah, that's what I was kind of afraid of. Like, he might just go back into Gyarados or something like that. But turns out he doesn't have Gyarados, he just has Mimikyu, so he might just try to stall out my Dynamax, but Groudon is going to do a lot of damage. There is no way Groudon loses 1v1 to a Mimikyu unless I get, I don't know, Wisp. I could get Wisp. That's still not losing 1v1 though. And I could get crippled in other ways. I could take a lot of heavy damage due to Curse. I could miss Precipice Blades. But losing this 1v1 is not one of the options here. So, but I just don't want to take too much damage winning this 1v1. So if he were to, say, like, sub down and then Curse out on the last turn, I would be taking a lot of damage. But he just goes for the Sword Sense. He doesn't even go for the Phantom Force. He just goes for the SD, and I am just gonna knock it out. I mean, Phantom Force was probably the better play if he had it, but regardless, if he didn't have Curse, he wasn't gonna be able to do enough damage on this Groudon to put me in Zacian KO range. And Dynamax running out or not is not too relevant because I'm always KOing the Zacian. And on top of that, I am always living this. I'm actually taking the same amount of percentage from Behemoth Blade, regardless of my Dynamax status, because of its side effect. So he does go for the Behemoth Blade. So let's see how much damage it does. Yeah, so it left me with quite a sizable chunk. There's no way Mimikyu was doing that much to Groudon. Even if he were to not go for the Sword Stance. I think the Sword Stance is clearly a misplay. But at the same time, there wasn't really much else that he could do about it. And this game we have a Zacian team with a Charizard. Interesting pick here. Darmanitan is actually really threatening to my team. I don't really have Ice Resist. I mean, Chandelure does resist ice, but it's not really an ice resist. It just doesn't take that little damage from any attack, even resisted ones. It just takes too much from everything. So I'm gonna use that Focus Sash to put it in the back. Make sure that I win that 1v1. Doesn't get out of hand. So, other than that, what else?
I don't think my third is going to be too impactful here, so Nihilego has a few good matchups, but it's against Station, so that's gonna be bad. Urshifu also against Station, so that's also a kind of a problem. Dragonite is the only thing that can actually take hits from it if it Dynamaxes, so I did end up picking that, but could have brought Mimikyu as well, I think. So I am going to go for the raw Solar Beam here. So the reason why I don't want to Dynamax max Overgrowth is that, first of all, it doesn't do that much damage over regular Solar Beam. It's only a 20 base power increase. And on top of that, there's quite a bit of Swamperts that use Focus Sash, Mirror Coat type of strategy, and if I were to Dynamax into that, that could be really deadly. I don't want to fall for that, so he does go for the Earthquake after surviving, which is pretty huge. And here I'm thinking that probably must be AV Swampert. Actually, for Swampert, because I am uninvested with the Solar Beam, it's possible for them to live a Solar Beam without AV, but the thing that really suggests me that it might be AV is the fact that he didn't go for Yawn, didn't go for Stealth Rock, anything like that, just raw Earthquake, which is interesting. And I am just gonna take advantage of that situation. The fact that he revealed AV like that made me okay going for the Precipice, and even if I get the miss, I'm not gonna get screwed over by a Stealth Rock or Yawn Cycle. I'm just gonna take a little bit more chip damage with the Groudon, which is not the end of the world. And I take down Haxorus to Sash for my efforts. Here, Haxorus is at only 1 HP, and there's a good shot that Groudon just lives this naturally, because Groudon is very bulky physically. But if you look at the opponent's team, I know that he has a Zacian, I know that he has a Swampert. So I actually have no reason to be so tight with the Dynamax. I just want Haxorus out of the way, and my Focus Sash Chandelure should win this matchup 1v2. I did enough damage on the Swampert that even a Dynamax can't save it from Energy Ball, and Zacian can't even Dynamax. So I think this is pretty much locked up. He did go for the EQ, but I don't think it really mattered too much if he went for some kind of Bandit, Outrage, or anything like that. That could have been and got the KO when I was not Dynamaxing, that would be really embarrassing. So it's good that I was able to clinch that KO with this Dynamax. Might have been, you might think it's a bit hasty, but especially because I do have the extreme speed in the back, but I thought this was going to be my safest option to win without any kind of setbacks. And he does go for the Swampert here, which I'm not sure if is the right play because he did do quite a lot of damage to my Groudon. It might just KO with the Behemoth. And I am just gonna max Overgrowth and just knock out this Swampert. And this should be GG. Even if Zacian KOs my Groudon, there's no way he can beat a Focus Sash Chandelure in Sun. And Zacian finally should come out anytime now. And I'm gonna go for the next Quake. I'm going to be doing a bit more damage than the Max Flare because I am not using Heat Crash, I am using Fire Punch. And Zacian gets the KO. So definitely I think he should have gone to that one first. But I don't think that was gonna change the outcome of the game. So yeah, Groudon goes down to Zacian because I am not too physically defensive. Even with the natural bulk, that just does way too much. So that's what I mean by Groudon's weakness. It's bulky, but it's not quite bulky enough to actually handle the strong attackers in the format. So I'm gonna bring Chandelure here, and if I miss out on the KO, I still have my Dragonite in the back. Goes for the Crunch, which is a pretty interesting tech, clever tech. He might have thought that he was gonna win this 1v1, but Focus Sash says no. I'm gonna go for the Flamethrower, super effective. Not a bulky Zacian, and it's gonna knock it out. And my final game is going to be against a Calyrex Shadow Rider team. And it's got screens from Ninetales, which is interesting. And he has a bunch of physical attackers, so Rillaboom and Cinderace. He has Rotom Wash and Zapdos, so doesn't really have some
super physically defensive tank that can actually beat the Dragonite 1v1. So that's why I'm thinking I'm just gonna lead with the Dragonite. If he leads Rotom, then so be it. In fact, I can actually go into Groudon into Rotom, which is pretty funny, but it's possible because I do have the Solar Beam. So after that, or I could go into Mimikyu as well, and go for the Trick Room, bring in Groudon, and go for the Solar Beams. And if I am Groudon in Trick Room, that's gonna do a lot of damage to my opponent's team. So I do lead the Dragonite here, and that is going to be covering my opponent's most dangerous lead, which is of course the Calyrex. And I guess you could say the more likely lead is Ninetales, which is fair, but I do have the Groudon to change the weather, turn that matchup in my favor, even when I lead Dragonite into Ninetales, which, you know, that probably is one of the worst matchups possible. So I am pretty bulky with my Dragonite here. Dragonites are naturally bulky, and with the multi-scale active, I should be able to take basically any 2 attack my opponent's Calyrex goes for. He decides to go for the Dynamax though, so interested to see what my opponent does. If he goes for the Draining Kiss based Max Starfall, I'm gonna say thank you very much and activate my weakness policy. He might not do that though, because I mean, Weakness Policy and Dragonite, they're such a common combo that even quite low on the ladder, as I am, they might just want to play around that. Because, I mean, that's what you do. Like, Dragonite activates Weakness Policy and uses Max Airstream. That's just what it does. And my opponent cleverly goes for the Max Mindstorm. That is going to break my multi-scale, and it's gonna boost his follow-up Max Mindstorm, so that is definitely a good play by him. And on top of that, I don't even do above half. And because I'm not like super fast with my Dragonite, I might actually need 2 Max Airstreams to outspeed this Calyrex. So I am gonna be forced to go for another Airstream, and also have to survive this. The second one does quite a lot more because of my no multi-scale and no with the psychic terrain put by Mindstorm. And now I'm faster. I'm thinking maybe he can just go into Zapdos or Groudon, which is totally fair because I mean Airstream, but I don't have a Dragon move to predict that Zapdos or Groudon coming in. Earthquake would be even worse, so I just go for the Max Airstream. No reason for me to overthink it. He does opt to sack it though, so this is definitely not a line that I agree with from my opponent. So he probably should have tried to keep that, especially if he has either Rotom or Zapdos in the back. Like that, I really don't agree with that play. Especially he does have the Zapdos, so I think that he should have just gone into the Zapdos, and that would have been that would give me a lot more challenge. But I'm gonna be okay taking the KO on basically the biggest threat on my opponent's team. I go for the Ice Beam. That does quite a bit. My opponent goes for the Thunder. Interesting. that's all I'm gonna say. And so he is Life Orb on top of that. So he probably Thunder is okay if you're trying to Dynamax it almost all the time. But I think if you are trying to use Zapdos for that kind of purpose, Rising Voltage might just be the better pick, because Rising Voltage has 140 base power even when you're Dynamaxing, and that's gonna mean that it's gonna be a lot more consistent option out of Dynamax and also in Dynamax. So like when the Dynamax ends, you can use that to boost your damage and all that good stuff, you know. So I'm gonna just go for the Trick Room, which is a bit of a tricky position. Like even though like that, I think him not going Zapdos was a big misplay. The team, he's got a strong team, so I am kind of still in a bit of a pickle here, because if he does have the Rillaboom in the back, then I could definitely be in quite a bit of trouble. That's kind of the thing with these a lot of I'm gonna put 6 really strong Pokemon on the team type of team builds, is that even if when you're misplaying, there is that threat of your opponent having the exact right Pokemon for the matchup, and that could really work to their advantage. But on the other hand, that means that if you're the one piloting that kind of team, you really have to be on top of your game in terms of picking the right Pokemon. And that is honestly not necessarily the most easy task. So as you see, my opponent, even with that kind of team, didn't bring the right Pokemon. I think I personally would have brought in Rillaboom. But, I mean, as I said, that is the type of situation you're putting yourself into with these type of teams. I mean, I'm gonna take this one here because even there's no way Groudon loses to Cinderace even with the Sun boost, and he's gonna miss Fireball on top of that. But that totally did not matter. I just wanted to make sure that I get any type of chip damage on the Cinderace. I don't want to lose to a Focus Sash counter set, so I am gonna go for the curse there, because if I were to Phantom Force and he just KO'd me with Sucker Punch, that would be really lame. And I don't think it matters too much, but my Trick Room runs out at this exact moment, which is perfect for me because he's gonna whiff another move up in the air with the Phantom Force, and I'm gonna land the Phantom Force here, and curse damage will take out the Cinderace. So good game. I hope this was interesting, because I mean Groudon, I don't think it's very good, but hopefully you guys learned something about it on this video. Thank you guys. See you next time. Bye.